I finally cracked. I've watched way too much Bake Off and I finally cracked. Hello friends old and new, my name is Lanashi and welcome to my kitchen. This video has been brought to you by my leftover Halloween squashes and pumpkins and an unhealthy amount of watching Bake Off. Today I'm going to do a tag, namely the end of the year book tag, because by the time I got around to any of the autumnal tags it was already winter here. Nobody tagged me in this because I don't have any friends, but I did see the tag on Vanessa at Paper Fairy's channel and I couldn't resist doing it. However, to make it a little more exciting, since I know that these tags can be a bit repetitive to go through, I'm also going to be making a pumpkin pie to go with it, because what better way to say goodbye to autumn and welcome winter into our hearts. I personally have a mostly hate relationship with winter. My emotions just become exceptionally unstable during that season or dulled out altogether. So up until this point I've been trying to do my best to pretend that winter just does not exist and that I am in a tropical paradise somewhere, such as Thailand, where I've been for the past couple of years. Nevertheless, I don't think that any of us are going anywhere this winter for understandable reasons, so I am properly leaning into the cold season, and so far it's been working out quite well. I note I've never made a pumpkin pie in my life, so let's see how things go. The first step is to make the actual pie crust, which will be chilling in the fridge for a while whilst we prepare the filling. And I was already a bit confused because the BBC recipe that I was referencing actually makes a sweet short crust pastry which is more akin to the kind you would get in tarts as opposed to the flaky pastry that you would get for pies. Nevertheless, I trusted in the recipe, at least up to a certain extent, and I used plain flour, unsalted butter, some icing sugar and an egg. Additionally, I added about half a teaspoon of vanilla extract for extra flavour. I shan't be listing all the ingredients and their measurements in the video. Instead, I will put a link down into the description of the recipes that I followed, although I would advise a bit of caution because I personally would not have gone for this pastry had I read it in advance, and I would have just made a flaky pie pastry instead. So right off the bat there's already some confusion regarding this pie recipe for me, because the crust that you're making for it is actually more of a sweet tart crust rather than a proper pie crust. Yeah, that confused me. It's not the flaky kind of pastry that you get on pies. This is what the recipe says and I'm gonna go with it. Regardless of that, the first question in the end of the year book tag is: are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Earns. It's one that I started about 2 months ago as soon as I finished the atrocity called Outlander, which I have a rant review on, by the way, if you're interested. And I'm not sure if it's Outlander putting me in a bad reading mood or if it's just that time of the year, but I just cannot get past the 40% mark on this one. However, I am genuinely enjoying it and looking forward to finishing it, and I do find it genuinely funny. And the other one, I believe, is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. The only other book I've read by Leigh Bardugo is A Language of Thorns, and that ended up being an absolute genuine favourite of mine. I'm gonna put it out there, I don't think that anything else that Leigh Bardugo's written will top The Language of Thorns for me personally. However, I have heard numerous good things about Shadow and Bone, and I am really looking forward to diving into the trilogy. Now, if you excuse me, I believe that I have some squash that needs chopping. In order to make the filling for the pie, all the pumpkins and squashes have to be roasted first at around 190 degrees for about 30 minutes. I have to say that chopping them into chunks and peeling them was a lot more time and effort than I had anticipated before then, but it's all gonna be worth it in the end, isn't it? Once the tray was in the oven, I took the opportunity to clean up my working space a little bit because I like to clean and tidy as I go whilst cooking. And I also couldn't resist the opportunity to brew myself some fresh coffee. After about 15 minutes, I took the dough out of the freezer and let it warm up for about 15 minutes before I started working it. Whilst I'm waiting for my pumpkin to roast and for my coffee to cool down, I may as well answer a couple more questions from the tag that I should be doing. Do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? I don't really, but one of the books that I am looking forward to reading before the year ends, and that I think would be a fitting autumnal read, is Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. Alice Hoffman is the author of Practical Magic, and if you haven't read the book then you've probably seen the film at some point in your life. It is genuinely one of my favourite autumnal films to watch, and the book was really good. I wasn't that thrilled by the prequel that was released after the first book was published, but nonetheless I am kind of excited to see what else she's come up with. Is there a new release you've been waiting for? I am so unaware of any new releases the entire time, be it books or video games or anything else along those lines, that I just went on Goodreads and had a look through the potential 2021 releases. One that did catch my eye was The Witness for the Dead by Catherine Addison, and it is apparently the second book in a series called The Goblin Emperor. You never know, by the time that one's released I may have actually read the first one and decided whether I want to read this or not. I genuinely know nothing about the series or the author. I've got 10 minutes left on the pumpkin, so my crust needs to go in now. This is the now warmed up dough being rolled out to fit the tart tin. I'm poking a few holes in it for the blind bake and putting pie weights on top of it to ensure that the dough doesn't rise in the oven whilst I'm preparing the filling, which is the fun part. I should at this point mention that I noticed the comments beneath the BBC recipe being very disapproving of it, so I altered the recipe to my own liking. Instead of pure milk, I added some double cream and some condensed milk to add some more texture to it. I threw a very small amount of cornstarch in to make sure that the mix sets. I used about 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Rather than sticking to certain quantities of the spices, I just threw in whatever I felt was right based on taste and personal preference. Also grated in some fresh ginger for that full pumpkin spice mix. And absurdly enough, I also added a dash of pepper because I noticed somebody on another recipe blog stating that this is the secret ingredient to making a pumpkin pie taste genuinely good. So then, what have we learned today? Peeling squash and pumpkins takes a lot longer than you might think. Cover the edges of your pie crust with aluminium foil so it doesn't burn if it gets too hot in the oven. And definitely don't stick your hand in the oven while it's heated at 190 degrees. Just me who didn't know that last one. This pie needs to stay in the oven for about an hour, so until then, let's get around to the final 3 questions. What are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? The Winter Night Trilogy. That's it. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not very well equipped to handle winter, so when it hits, it packs a punch right to my mental stability. For that very reason, I couldn't start the Winter Night Trilogy for ages because every time I got to a certain point, it would just crush me mentally and I didn't feel like going on any further than that. However, I think that this is the year when I'll finally read it in an appropriate season, and I promise you that it is worth it. The atmosphere in this book is just... Another book that I would like to get around to is The Sisters of the Winterwood by Rena Rossner. I don't know much about this one, however, as you can tell, I am on a row of winter books, so I'm very much looking forward to getting through that one because it's been sitting on my Kindle for a solid year now. Finally, Walkenhurst by Michelle Paver. Somebody once described this book to me as the perfect autumnal read, and that's genuinely all I know about it. But I am sold. Is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favourite book of the year? Nah. I mean, I read The Winter of the Witch at the beginning of the year, and that was pretty much the highlight of my reading this year, so nah. And finally, have you already started making reading plans for 2021? No, I am a massive mood reader and making plans for my reading always ends disastrously. However, I do always try to read books seasonally, as you can probably tell by the fact that I'm forcing my way through winter-themed books in the midst of winter, and I plan on continuing that trend throughout 2021. There we have it, friends. 1 tag and 1 delicious pumpkin pie ready to go. All it took was about 6 hours of effort. It wasn't actually 6 hours, it's just at the sunset. It's at 3 p.m. now. 3! We did have a bit of a mishap where the tinfoil actually dragged a bit of the pie filling with it. However, that gave me an opportunity to actually try it without ruining it completely before my fiance gets home. And actually, you know what? It's not bad. I'd say that this is now my second favourite way to have pumpkin, the first one being pumpkin soup. Obligatory self-advertisement. If you like this video, then please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and check out some more of my stuff. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining me by the hearth or in the kitchen. I'm Lana Shi and I'll see you next time. Bye!